Viego can easily
They've
just be picked
been
up.
they've been quite confident taking the GP blind. That was obviously something they did with Irrelevant. Important to note is that Kakos' most played champion is that Gangplank as well. I wonder whether they opt into it. They're probably going to go for it for third rotation. Now Solary have a choice. I feel like it's been telegraphed somewhat that they are willing to go for that. They lock in the Aphelios and the Viego. They need to respond.
Yeah, the Ophelio seems a little bit weird to me still. A champion that
Yeah.
has really, fallen out of priority given durability patch, but I think the LFL specifically is probably the one place that I've seen Aphelios still just continually picked regardless. You get this Nami in as a byproduct, right? This is just the powerful bot lane, and then the Gwen comes through. We're just taking away those powerful picks and shoring up good lane matchups. Very likely that we see something potentially like that Lulu come through for an enchanter to be paired alongside the Ophelio certainly does make sense. You can opt into something like the Thresh as well if you want something a bit more lane oriented and not just looking for that late game scaling that this Lulu would provide you. But I expect this one to be locked in, certainly gives it an element of safety, and you're trying to mitigate the early game potential of Solari's bot lane here.
Hmm. I think one of the issues here, obviously, is I do like the fact that it's a flex. You could obviously put it in the mid lane. We don't see that that often these days. I don't massively agree with the fact that you need to go support here. I feel like your champion pool in the support role isn't going to get that pinched. I feel like you're more likely to get top laners banned out here. So you might see that some of Kakos' comfort champions are taken away by Solari in the second ban phase, especially things that are good into the Gwen. I feel like you did need to respond potentially with the Gangplank here, but we'll see what they do eventually take to the table.
Yeah, so both solo laners missing for Misfits Premiere right now. You expect to see those taken off the board, where Solary haven't yet locked in their jungler. There is that world where Jocko flexes this Gwen into the jungle, but it's still obviously expected to see it in the top lane. That mid lane is also going to likely have to be blinded for Solary here, so they need to think about what they want to take blind. Are there any bad matchups for it that they want to ban away? Is there anything that's particularly scary that they don't want to be going up against? It looks like for the most part, we expected jungle bans from Misfits Premier, and if they're banning away, this isn't particularly a bad matchup in the Kale, but it's one of those ticking time bombs where if Solari haven't won the game by X point in the game, then they're going to be in a pretty bad spot. They do ban away one of the classic Gwen counters in the Jax, quite happy to see that. But Solari already putting themselves with a very good early game position, right? This Lucian Nami in a bot lane duo. Would like to see Jocko take something fairly aggressive in the jungle to try and help out, facilitate some bot lane success.
I'm imagining GP here for Misfits Premier, yeah, and then you play for the R5 counter pick. Makes sense to me. It's a mm, not a massive. I think it's all right because you want to. It's not like you're going for the blind either. I guess they can flex the Gwen into jungle, so they may be scared about that. I would have liked to have seen the GP lock in here. It's Katskos is one of his most played champions. Obviously, it's kind of similar to the style they would have been playing in that before his addition to the roster. We'll have to see what they respond with here.
Either way, though, this is a early aggressive jungler that Solari are looking for. Expect to see that locked in. Jocko also has already played the game of Xin Zhao this season. First game of the regular split wasn't a win, but it was a Xin Zhao game for Jocko. And defaulting again back to this comfort style. Keeping in fashion with the early game win condition of this bot lane. This is helping this setup, making sure that Azet and Steelback have a lot of control of that bot side. If there's any need to potentially go and invade and try and counter jungle Zanzara, they're going to be in a good position to do so. Safe, stable, blind pick in the mid lane for Scarlet is going to be the Azir, the Victor locked in, excuse me. See the Azir hovered on the other side, but Scarlet also fairly big fan of the Victor. It's going to be the Azir as an answer. So taking two control mages into the mid lane, expect this to be fairly passive, but for the early stages of this game, I expect a lot of priority around that bot side.
Yeah, 100%. I think we spoke about one of the focal points for this game being that scuffle in the bot lane, how at Misfits Premier they like to enable Wu Light to carry in that late game as they get into the latter stages of the game. And how Solari, although they don't necessarily have much of an identity that we've been able to kind of salvage from the wreckage that is a lot of their previous games, it seems to be that there are remnants of that idea of playing around bot lane, the bot lane being one of the saving graces of this team. Sparks will fly in this game, and I think how both.
Yeah, and I think that this is then the best way for Solari to take the win. We came into the game itself and said, okay, if they can win, it's most likely going to be through Steelback and the potential outplays that he can use. Nami herself, not the greatest roam champion, can still have some sort of impact across the map if you are, looking to get some successful bubbles off some successful roams. But we don't imagine there's going to be too much control around that top side, too much fighting power to either of the top sided players. Those solo lanes are likely going to be fairly quiet in the early game. And Illusion Nami always sort of demands presence, demand control. Unless, of course, you just completely stomp and don't need that jungle prio at all. We're expecting to see Solary try and utilise the Lucian Nami, and expecting Misfits Premier to, once again here, set themselves up for a late game where Woolite can carry. They've got Chayek on a big carry as well on this Azir. Both of the hyper carries that Misfits have drafted do benefit very nicely with Lulu. So a lot of onus on Vander once again, this time to try and stay alive and keep his teammates up as well.
Talk me through the Gnar Gwen matchup in isolation, because when we talk about how both junglers are kind of, well, I feel like Zanzara on the Viego has a bit more. He's a bit more flexibility in the directions that he can go to in this early game. I think Xin Zhao is very much like you're saying. He's locked into that bot side of the map for at least the first 15 minutes of the game. He can kind of do different things on his second clear, perhaps. But in isolation, how does the Gnar Gwen matchup play out?
Well, I'm expecting Gnar has early range, should be able to get some fairly nice leads early on, but Gwen, certainly a champion that can scale up better.
Well, in any case, we'll have to see how the matchup plays out. We're going to be throwing to a game now. Don't go anywhere. We're going to see how this matchup unfolds. And we're on to the Rift now. No fancy graphic, just straight into business for what is set to be a brutal brawl between these both bottom of the table teams. I think it's fair to say, rude dudes, but let's see whether they can pick up a win against each other.
Yeah, neither one of these teams currently sat in a playoffs position. They are both obviously going to be looking to change that, remedy it as the season goes on. Misfits Premier, I think, coming into this one, at least in my eyes, as the favourites. I think that they have got slightly better pieces overall, and I really like their composition as a whole here, setting up for a really nice late game team fight. They have got that Gnar as a front line. They've got some really good backline damage with the Azir, with the Aphelios. The question becomes, can they survive the early game? Can Azza and Steelback generate that lead, use Jocko on the early game pick of the Xin Zhao to put themselves out in front and really try and force the issue on Misfits Premier? I maybe like to see early game push in the bot lane, potential invades into Zanzara's jungle with Jocko and the bot lane to see if they can potentially steal away a blue buff, steal away some camps. There's a lot of things that can be done by the early game of Solary. You just have to see whether or not they set up for it.
Yeah, I think as well it has to be a case of best foot forward, especially for an organisation like Misfits Premier, a well-celebrated team within the French kind of ecosystem. Obviously, the LEC org as well. Not coming up to the best start with some roster issues behind the scenes. Obviously, that was somewhat unavoidable, but now is the time with a bit more of a roster secured, not questions up in the air. Now is the time, like I said, to be a best foot forward.
Yeah, we're getting to that point now where at the end of this week, right, we're a third of the way through the season and we're starting to get past that point. Oh, okay, besides the small sample size, we're now getting to the point of, okay, well, these are trends that are actually starting to form with the teams. So we need to see positive trends beginning to form with the bot lane, with every team really, and with the two that we have on screen right now, the bottom of the standing. We need to see them start to pick up those wins. If we are considering them as playoff contenders, people that are trying to challenge for, this time not getting promoted, it looks like, with their positioning in the table, or not getting relegated, excuse me, they need to start turning that season around right about now.
Yeah, I think an important thing to say is, based over this positive trend, one positive trend for Misfits Premier is in terms of the way that they want to play and get to that late game. They're very good at holding on to the late. It's just the fact that when they get there, they throw it all away. So, in contrast to what Solary this game want to do, which is blow open the game through bot with very aggressive 2v2 duo, Misfits Premier by a trend have showed us they're able to survive.
And so far down in that bot lane, it's honestly not going too poorly. The level 1 of Aphelios Lulu proving to be enough. Glitter Lances landing left, right, and centre have been forcing Steelback and Azza a little bit out of the laning phase. And when you take Piercing Light on the Lucian level 1, it means that you don't have the auto attack range to try and duel with Woolite with that sniper early on. You're able to just keep the Lucian at range. Now we've reached that point where level 2s have come through, where Solary have got that extra little bit of mobility. We should expect to see them try to turn this laning phase around. If they can't, this is, honestly, it may seem like nothing, the fact that you're going even, but as a Lucian Nami lane, you never want to be even. You just want to be stomping.
Yeah, especially when, just context outside of draft, these guys are the focal point for this team. They're really people who need to, the set of people in the team that need to step up in these games for them to have chances of winning when they've looked best. It's when Azza and Steelback are able to perform, but that's not the case. It's going to be a worrying trend for Solary.
And something else to point out as well is that Jocko pathed up toward that top side, right? Completed his bot side clear, started from red buff, and is ended on the top side scuttle. Isn't in a position to help out particularly with that bot lane. He is going up toward this top side of the map, an area that we'd expected to see be fairly quiet, and you know, maybe looking for a little bit of a second camp clear, or if he's just putting down that vision. It's going to be nice, nice little tracking at the very least of Zanzara, who, as you can see, is very aware that this bot lane should have been the focal point and would have been an area to try and capitalize on.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that we're sort of allowing these lanes to play out in isolation. I would have expected the jungle matchup, especially the stylistic matchup. We talk about Zanzara being a jungler who's willing to sacrifice personal leads to build and facilitate his side lanes, and especially his solo lanes as well. It seems to be the case. Both teams junglers opting in for that full clear, and not a lot of action in any of these lanes occurring.
Okay, so Jocko actually skipping his Kroos spawn, looking for a bot lane gank.
Here, wave state's not great. They tried to go in. Azza's quite low. Woolite pops the heal here. Jocko's on the chase now. They try to get onto him. He's going to have to flash. He flashes away. Steelback flashes forward with the bubble, but doesn't land. And it's an avoided gank from Misfits Premier.
Yeah, both summoner spells burnt by Woolite, so that does give them the opportunity to repeat that gank angle in a few minutes' time. But it is going to be an advantage given over to the jungler of Misfits Premier. Zanzara is going to be a couple of camps ahead at the very least right now in exchange for that bot lane gank. We need to see them try and repeat on this, try and punish this at the very least. Azza and Steelback now have that 2v2 where the Aphelios has no flash. You can punish, you can try and take down an Aphelios in a laning phase if they're overextended, if cooldowns are used and mismanaged. Expect to see this bot lane try to get exploded open by Solary, given that window they've just generated.
Yeah, Zanzara goes aggressively here. He is skipping a timer on his wolves here to do so, but gets a little bit of control in the jungle. I think important to note is that Jocko is now locked into a decision tree whereby it leads into the top side of the map for the next minute or so. And then obviously he can potentially stick around for this Krog camp that he didn't clear earlier, which allows him to be on the same side of the map at the same time that Zanzara is. I'm expecting to see action in the bot lane in the next minute or so.
Yeah, and then the issue with Jocko making this decision is that he's behind Zanzara in his clear. Zanzara's completed his full second clear besides that Gromp, where at this point Jocko only completed half of his second, right? You can see that there's a 2-camp disparity until those Krugs get picked up, and it is putting the Zinzao a little bit behind in favour of setting up for the entire bot lane skirmish.
Yeah, the thing is here, Jocko was kind of read the play that they need to get the wave in. He was potentially looking to punish the bounce, but Zanzara, with the priority gained to them, and Vander here gets the dragon, and Jocko's wasting a lot of time here with those top camp.
Yeah, so overall, just a really nice set of pathing by Zanzara. Has been successful, at least in his early game pathing, and this is kind of where we expected to see Jocko path toward this bot side, where you can take that 30 seconds out of your time, essentially, to make your way, clear those top camps, and then you can clear your bot camps and spend a lot of time down there while you're waiting for them to cycle back up. Fortunately, that's just not really been the case, and Solary's jungler is now a little bit set behind, where you can see he's, you know, effectively finishing clear 2, sort of 1.5 to get his second clear finished. Where Zanzara is resetting up to the top side, and he's already clearing away on those third set of camps, getting himself a nice advantage. Going to have that red buff, the level lead going to be slightly more prevalent.
Oh, here comes Azza. He goes aggressively, gets a nice little chunk there onto Woolite. No summoners burned in return, but a good trade nonetheless. The pressure's somewhat mounting for Misfits Premier bot lane now.
This is kind of what we needed to see, right? We know that the Lucian Nami lane is positive, it's going to win. They also have Sustain, where Misfits Premier have mitigated damage in the support role. Lulu stops damage coming through initially, but has no way of healing it back up. Nami, the complete opposite, where you don't particularly stop any of the damage coming through, but you've got that ebb and flow to get that health back in your pocket. So overall, thus far, Solary's bot lane making at least some aggressive moves, but it's not amounting into a CS lead. It's not amounted to anything more than those couple summoner spells burnt, and we're almost at that point where Woolite's heal is back available. His flash is about 2 minutes away, and that doesn't really bode too well. We touched on it earlier on, right, where if Solary's bot lane are behind, that's not good. They do still have the default win condition of a victor in the late game, but that's not something that's going to be particularly prevalent when you're up against a Aphelios, a Zia who can outrange the victor, a Gnar who's going to make their life a pretty big nightmare. And it's all Misfits Premier for this early game. Zanzara has just done a very good job at being in the right place at the right time, and making sure that he's getting the most out of his time on the map.
Zanzara is going to be able to take away the Rift Herald here. Important to know is that Jocko, with the priority, I was maybe thinking they'd set up for a slow push. Vanda hasn't pinged over to the level 6 mark, but obviously the summoners being available, they're not quite able to set up that slow push, go for that dive. It's going to mean that he just takes away the blue buff. I think another important thing to note is the fact that for a team, I think both teams have good scaling options in the Gwen, in the Victor as well for Solary. But just as a team, in terms of their identity, Misfits Premier are a team they like to get through early games like this and not get punished through, well, rather through reactivity rather than proactivity. And they've been a team that's been rather proactive. And this is a good contrast to what we've seen previously from them, and it's a good sign.
Maybe that can be, you know, the thing that takes them through to a game win here. That would like to, or we would like to see that at least be the case. I want to draw your attention. There we go. As if by magic, up to this top side, where actually there's a sizable CS lead for the Gnar. We expected in the early stages, right? You asked at the start, okay, well, how's this going to play out? Early game, anticipate that Gnar just comes away with an early game lead. Does have a range advantage over the Gwen, and so far, that's been put to good use.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you'd speak about that lead. It is, you know, traditionally seen as an incremental lead, not quite the lead that we're seeing right now. That is a 28 or so CS lead. Quite massive. I think there's been some big question marks around Kyo's performance thus far. Obviously, question marks about Kakos coming in and performing here, as we do see the culling come down, but not able to dissuade much. The plates are gained by Misfits Premier. But Kakos being the person coming in, being the player coming in rather for Misfits Premier. First game here, debut. He's showed quite an impressive performance in his laning phase. We spoke about how there were aspersions surrounding his name, whether he'd be able to live up to expectations, and he's done so thus far.
So excited to see what happens for Kakos a little bit later on in the game. Obviously, the Gnar in the laning phase. Okay, and we had a little bit, we had a few question marks as well around the Gnar versus the GP pick, and in particular why it was, you know, this Gnar that got picked up. So far, I am by no means disappointed by this Gnar, right? The GP would have had not the same amount of prevalence through these early stages. We do still need to see how well he team fights with this Gnar, of course. That is the leading reason that you do pick up the Gnar, your Mega Gnar engagements, the timing on the Rage Bar as well. Certainly something that we can attribute to good Gnar play. So we'll have to wait and see whether or not that can be facilitated, if that is something that is going to be particularly relevant in the later stages, or if Misfits Premier are able to just weather that storm and use their carries to do the work.
Yeah, completely. I think with the game slowed down like this as well, that dragon spawning up in around 10 seconds, Diego's now moving to it. Jocko's locked into the other side of the map, might rotate down now, but they're going to have the first move on it at least, and Misfits Premier building towards a very strong mid-game.
With that dragon spawning as well inside the next minute, it does set up for, it's actually just spawned up, there we go, where it sets up for a real window for a bot side play for this Lucian.
Azza gets stunned here, he has to cleanse. Zanzara's going to be here, he has an ultimate here. Azza has flash, he's going to have to flash it. It lands onto Steelback instead though. Wave goes wide, here comes the ultimate from Viego, Lulu ult as well. They're getting a lot of return damage out. Jocko's here, he has flash. Colin comes down, Zanzara's going to be the one that goes down for first blood. And a gank opportunity that was turned in favor of a dragon means that it's actually Solary that pick up the first blood here. And although it was a controlled and slow game for Misfits Premier, at the drop of a hat, they take that advantage, they take that initiative. It doesn't go well for them at all.
Yeah, so it takes 12 minutes here, but the Lucian Nami finally setting up for some semblance of success, and it is largely just turned around off the back of Azza and Steelback, the bright points of Solary that we highlighted coming in. Look at Steelback here, very wisely positioning, flashes or prevents the flash stun from Zanzara coming through, willingly sacrifices his own health pool to get Zanzara baited out a little bit. Meanwhile, Azza just raining damage down, even through all of the Lulu shielding and damage that can come back. Lucian's able to do enough damage. Chayek probably fine here in this mid lane. You can see just able to walk it out. But a nice little set of skirmishes down on that bot side, and Solary bot lane living up to their expectation here. Jocko now able to turn this one into a dragon and start to maybe give Solary those early mid-game win conditions that we needed to see from them.
I think this has quite big ramifications in terms of in that previous exchange we did see that Woola had to burn the... in the beginning of that exchange rather, Woola had to burn the flash to get the return. That's what set up the play here. Now with Azza coming on top at the end of that play means he's able to get that mythic item, obviously also able to finish the play at steel caps. Not quite the damage option you'd like to look for, but it is going to give him a bit of power in that trading. Now all eyes are on the bot lane for the 3 or so minutes while Woolite doesn't have that flash? Can they further embolden this Lucian forwards? Is a big question for me, Rude.
Couple of plates still available, and then my question sort of defaults to actually a little bit of a detraction from this bot side necessarily, because we've got that Herald spawning in about 30-40 seconds time, where you could see the first brick be broken, be taken down. This bot lane has had a lot of plates go either way. The bot lane for Solari's turret is actually on its last legs, just the one plate standing, where Misfits Premier have got like 2.5, half a HP turret left, both of which basically can be taken down by a Rift Herald charge. And you can see that Solary are already getting pressured a little bit. If Zanzara just sticks around, the likelihood is they're going to be able to break open this turret without a Rift Herald. It frees then Woolite and Vander up to move around to somewhere else on the map and get them out of what could be a fairly sticky lane position. And I really like the cognizance of Zanzara here to just say, okay, my team needs a little bit of help pushing this bot lane to free them up. I'll sit here and shadow them while they've got no flash, and then we can continue to go about the map in our own business.
Yeah, I think the problem there is I like the idea in terms of pressuring a wave, but Azza and Steelback, they have the wave, they have the culling. It's going to be very difficult to get that wave in. You don't necessarily have anything that, unless you have the right gun set up on Aphelios, it's very difficult to stop that from happening. That's not going to be the case. Now we do see the side of Misfits Premier, they're going to be rotating up to Herald, and I expect this to be where the first turret comes from.
Yeah, and this was sort of what we were alluding to, I suppose, with Zanzara, setting up for that wave being pushed in. It gives Vander a recall timing, and now, if Vander wanted, could be up on this top side. For the moment, it looks like there's no contest. Solari's jungler is down in the bot lane. Jocko is not contesting this at all, does not care for the Rift Herald, so, Vander can go back to the bot lane, protect his ADC. But there was that opportunity. It's the forethought of saying, okay, if necessary, I can be here to help you out and make sure that that is not a concern. And now on the spot side, Woolite should be able to step up at the very least, try and collect these minions and to try and clear the wave.
It's gone down just about there. And although we were talking just now about how that first turret would be going down for the side of Misfits Premier, it's not the case thus far. Just short on the culling there. Going to avoid it, but it is the first turret. And I think that's a very important thing to realise for Solary, as they have got on that first turret, haven't they, Rude?
They did, and it was on their powerful Lucian Nami bot lane duo. They're now going to be emboldened to move around Summoner's Rift. It likely comes at the cost of their own bot tier 1 turret, unless they make any particularly aggressive moves, but then they're going to lose out on tempo for that case. We did see in the mid lane as well, both Summoner spells burned from Scarlet and Chayek. It looked like there was an attempt at trying to pick up a quick kill with the Shimmer Shuffle. Did not come to fruition, though. Nice fancy keep from Scarlet, gets out to safety. Despite the gank timing from Zanzara. There's that bot tier 1 turret falling down, and now a question becomes, where do our carries go? Typically this is when you'll see people refer or default to mid lane ping pong, where ADCs just go mid clear waves and keep on doing that, or they can go up to that top side and you can switch your top laners down into the more elongated bot lane, and then start to play around vision on the bot side. Really does become a lot more important because of how long this bot lane is. Making sure that whoever it is down there can farm safely does become very important. You can see, if we look at the bot side of Solari's jungle, it is completely dark. With Azza being this far forward, he needs to be careful that nobody's collapsing on him, and fortunately there's not, but that's because they're all overloading into the mid lane to use this Herald to try and break open Victor's Bastion.
This was going to be a big thing for me. Where were they going to put this Herald? Was it going to be utilized in the top side? Was it going to be used to generate cryo or the upcoming dragon? Instead, Misfits Premier say no to both of those options. They just brute force it down. Now the mid turret, like you say, is in a very dire position where it's just about clinging on for health. Okay, so now if they divert those resources into the mid lane, it's going to be difficult to stop them from taking that.
And that's something that you see a lot from, it's what we used to see a lot from the LPL in spring, where you would see Victor and Corki matchups all the time. Rift Herald was actually really important because neither of those two mid laners would ever really give any control over, never give any chance to hit the wave onto the turret. So using Herald onto mid lane turrets was really important to try and take those down. Same thing here up against Scarlet, as in a little bit of trouble topside.
Yeah, Choco's gone in a bit early here. They've kind of alerted Team Misfits Premier as to what the game plan is here. They've converged in a 3-man unit towards that top side. It's going to mean that mid lane turret does go down, as is going to have the push in the bot side as well. I'm not entirely sure whether this is worth it for Solary. You are giving away your mid tier 1, which really opens up the map in regards to the Victor aforementioned. You're now going to be giving over that dragon as well, allowing them to build towards that soul condition.
And obviously when there's a couple of Drakes being picked over and taken, that puts a little bit of pressure onto the other side. It puts that clock onto Solary to say, okay, well, we kind of need to round out this game fairly swiftly. We already highlighted the fact that they wanted this bot lane prio, and it would have then extended to potentially wanting some dragons. But they go for gold on the top side of the map, and they don't have that early game snowball win condition of an early game soul. The Mountain Soul not necessarily the greatest win con, but certainly something very good at alleviating damage through the late game. Going forward now, they're not going to have that for a long time, where Misfits Premier are always going to have that thing of thinking, well, you know what? We may be a little bit behind, but if we've got the Drake stacking and if we've got that extra shield, that's going to supplement anything that we'd let go in the early stages.
Yeah, it's intriguing to me that that is the way that this game is played out. I feel like a lot more could have been done to enable Solari's bot lane thus far, but Zanzara is going to get stunned up here. He's going to have to ult away. Vander is here to help him with that ultimate if need be. That's been forced out there by Jocko. Nice bit of aggression here in the bottom top side. They translate that top tier 1 into getting wards into that top side. Zanzara's there, wrong place, wrong time. Doesn't mean that he goes over the wall here. Very aggressive here as he camp. Top Shayak taking it.
It's down 2 levels, so this is here not a slouch in damage. Here we go, as the dashes forward, immediately backs away and doesn't even break the overheal shield that comes from Woolite plus Vander's picks there. So still lacking a little bit in that damage regard, waiting for that collect to be completed before the Lucian truly does come to be a powerful threat. And with this Baron, spawning, I don't imagine that either of the teams are going to go for it too quickly. But it's something to keep your eyes on. We've seen a lot in the LFL of teams kind of forgetting that Baron exists and trading it for a dragon in situations where, you know, potentially they shouldn't have done. And with Solary at least showing presence up there, it does let me know that they're not going to let that happen too early.
I'd just like to point out for a second that there is a fight unfolding here just around this Baron. We spoke about how teams would be reluctant to pull the trigger that, but the trigger has been pulled. Lucian has acquired the kill onto Kakos here. We have to get the mid lane prio now. Towards that, Jocko comes in here. Shurima Shuffle does land him right into Zanzara. Ultimate isn't quite available. He's been polymorphed. Can he get over the wall? He does flash eventually, but here comes Zanzara. Heal comes out from Steelback. One more Q will do it. Heal comes out. It's going very low, but he's not found him. Az is here as well. And damage has been found. Stun has been found. Cleanse immediately. He gets stunned again though. Zanzara's gone low. Culling has taken him out almost. He goes to about 50 HP, but it's going to be the kill onto Kakos.
Edge of Death.
Jocko on the return.
Very close margins here. It's this play. Scarlet starts it all off with the Victor, just catches really the entirety of Misfits Premier taking a poor path through the wall. Katskos gets taken down, and with the Gnar having Flash, not having Mega Gnar though, it does mean that that front line is really not up to standard, not where you want it to be, and it's, as we say, quite tentative to get going down. And this is that knife's edge fight where Heal comes through, saves Jocko the first time, Ebb and Flow plus Bubble, more than enough. Actually, if that W lands, it actually turns out to be a kill onto Zanzara with the low health pool that he has at the end of this. It's so close, such fine margins for both of the junglers to get away. But overall, neither one of them ends up getting taken down, and we're still at this very even gold game, where there's nothing really to separate the two teams as Asa goes forward.
Yeah, fight here. Vander utilizes that Lulu ult to get away from it, but the Lucian army really starting to ramp up now. They got that early advantage. They've really been doing a lot of it. With the second kill now gained from Azza, it's going to mean that he's got that second item now, building towards the third, the Collector. Going to be abusing some of the members that haven't quite built that armor up, i.e. Aphelios, i.e. Azir.
Still waiting on that second item for Chayek as well. As soon as that Shadow Flame comes through, Azir is fairly empowered in the matchup. Nice little ulti from Woolite, doesn't really do too much.
One of the things I wanted to point out is that although the way the matchup played in jungle early, they're going to be taking away this mid lane turret and then translating the dragon into a second dragon for themselves, presumably. A lot of reset time is coming out from Misfits Premier. The jungle matchup, although, and Azza goes straight in there with Gale Force, gets a lot of damage. Zanzara is there to body block, but it would have meant a dead Woolite almost instantly. Saw about 40% of his HP bar just get absolutely eviscerated there. The jungle matchup, however, so we go back to a lull in action. I tried to say about 4 or 5 times. Although the way it played out early was that Zanzara was getting that lead and Jocko was wasting that tempo, which allowed Zanzara to propel forwards, that's now not the case. It's slowed down in the favor of the opposition. Jocko is able to get a lot more aggression in this top side. He's able to get those wards out on that previous play, which then allowed them to spot out Akos on that then resulting play. One of the reasons why it's been going so well for them in recent minutes.
And now, to play devil's advocate a little bit with you here, because I think that's a great point, and Jocko is ahead right now. I want to point out that that came at the cost of the bot lane not being so far ahead that they were just completely steamrolling, right? Maybe there's a world where if Azza got an extra kill based off of Jocko's pathing, or based off the fact that Zanzara hadn't pathed down to this bot lane so frequently to save them and prevent Woolite and Vander going down, that maybe Azza's just 1v9ing this fight right now. It's a hypothetical situation that we don't get to see have played out just because of how Zanzara played it early. He was able to play toward this bot side a little bit earlier on, and since, obviously has fallen a little bit by the wayside, Jocko putting himself a little bit more of a priority on there. So I'm curious about how it would have played out otherwise. That's an awkward back, but these junglers certainly playing their own game, and we'll have to see which one ends up coming out on top.
Yeah, own game's being played. I think it owes more to the style as well. You see Zanzara, although he was able to play that kind of selfish style in the early game. He does revert back to his regular self, start out exporting some of that attention out to the side lanes. Means he falls slightly far behind. It's not exactly an exponential lead that's been gained for Jocko, but it does mean that some of the pressures have been alleviated somewhat. And I think it's important to point out as well is that not much of an advantage for any lane has been granted. That hasn't been from an individual basis. I think Kakos's lead over EO in this top side has been pretty much an isolated matchup the entire time. It's still around that 34 CS margin that we've been seeing since the early game. Whether or not they can build towards a fight is a real pinnacle of a question in the next few minutes or so. But with that Baron spawn up now, it's all about vision control. It's all about who can pull the trigger first.
Yeah, Shadow Flame's built up by both of your mid laners as well now, so they do have that 2-item spike that all mages look toward, both with the Lud and both with the M-Pen boots. So a lot of magic damage coming through in the mid-game team fights that we're going to be seeing. Both of your top laners also hitting their 2-item spikes. Nash's Tooth plus Riftmaker, sort of the core for a Gwen build being picked up, where Kaskos has gone for this Trinity Force Black Cleaver, electing to be that more emboldened front line.
Jocko's going to be getting the stun up into Zanzara. Zanzara's not finished his second item here. He has to ult away from the wave. Jocko's not able to go too much far forward, but Lulu does ult preemptively before damage came out. Woolite's not here either. They're going to be able to push this wave in. Is it turret?
Just a little bit of poking, a little bit of damage exchanged. I know Summoner spells burnt, a couple of ultis do go down, both supports and junglers wasting theirs. Oh, that could have been some Summoner spells there. Gale Force into the wall is a little bit awkward, and Woolite honestly getting away with a little bit of murder right there.
Yeah, completely. Obviously, had both summoners there, so I think, like you're saying, Rude Dude, would have been the burning of those sums. Unfortunate collision there. A bit of a crash for Azza in what a game that has gone quite smoothly for him thus far. Another thing I wanted to bring attention to is look how much CS Shayak has right now. He's at 300 at around 26. These are quite impressive numbers. My maths is not great. It's more of your forte. I don't know what that averages out to. I'd imagine it's around 11 or 12, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. That's not far gone. It's
Very
certainly a good
high.
ratio, that's for sure.
It's not quite Froggen in Season 3 numbers, but this is, LFL Season 12 is quite impressive numbers for a mid lane. I guess that must be where all of Zanzara's farm's going.
Yeah, true. It's just Chayak moving around, picking everything up. And can we just take a moment to credit durability patch, by the way? Chayak has got a couple of hundred health from Shadow Flame and has 3k HP.
Yeah, that is pretty mental. It's 3k HP at 27 minutes. Jocko walks in here. Uses that ultimate. He does not care about any of this sort of offense that Misfits Premier are going to be able to offer here. Does just walk in, takes that pink ward, smites the Baron for a little bit of HP. Actually doesn't end up getting much of a net gain from the smite there, so bit of a dubious activity going on there.
Nevertheless, he lives. That's the important thing. Crescent God obviously expended, and to give some rough numbers, it's 11.5 CS per minute.
It's going to be the Shurima shuffle. Flash is not going to work.
Woo!
And that's the side lane. And that is essentially going to be them moving towards Baron as well.
This can definitely be them setting up for a fight right now. I think that if they've got the mid lane pick, it looks like I'm just entirely wrong and they're going to go back to base. They got a great pick on the mid lane.
Hold your horses here, Rude Dude. I think it was important to draw attention to the fact that Woolite wasn't exactly in a position whereby he would have to be able to move in rather easily. They'd set up around the mid lane. He would have gone on to him. Vander's going to get taken out almost immediately, walks up too slow. Had ultimate, I believe, as well. Not able to react quite quickly enough. actually underestimating the damage output there, but it is the 3-0 for Azza. 3 items now, building towards that 4th. Going to be the Eye Edge, I believe. And he's absolutely massive right now.
Incredibly. With us coming in and painting this picture of Azza and Steelback needing to be that win condition, I mean, I'm feeling vindicated right now. They've certainly had that showcase through the early to mid-game stages, and we're starting to see them really show up in the late game where they still have this item disparity, this item lead over the enemy bot lane, where it's now amounting to more than just items, it is the levels as well. There's an extra level for Azza over Woolite, and with that you get a little bit of extra base gold based stats to come through. And so, you know, credit Chayek's CS as well. We can say the same for Azza. 317 at 29 minutes is still ahead of the curve. We say perfect CS is 10 per minute. This is above perfect.
They're doing better than 10 out of 10, Rude Dude, which is, you know,
exactly.
it's quite impressive, really. Some would say more than impressive if there was an expletive to kind of qualify that. Speaking of things that have been qualified right now, we do see Jocko utilize the ultimate there, gets the smite onto that blue, but he's going to get the Grom taken away. It's a little bit of a trade-off. I would rather have the blue in every instance there, but...
Really?
Yeah, of course. Blue over Grom. You get mana regen. Worth more gold.
Yeah, but Grom.
Right, that's the analysis, right?
Yeah, that's it.
I think the start onto Baron is a bit gratuitous at this point. Yeah, overzealous would be the word. Thank you, dude. But game is playing out very much in the way that I think Solary wants. They've enabled that bot side to kind of bolster themselves on forward. Misfits Premier are now at the point where they've slowed down the game. Managing to get to this point, they're faltering slightly. We're starting to see some of the worrying signs that we do see from Misfits Premier sometimes. Has been the case that Vander gets caught out in some of these later game team fights. We're in that late game now. We need to see pixel perfect from them, otherwise Solary will capitalize. A risk is being taken here with Solary able to respond so quickly. The Nash is going down so quickly here. 3k or so now. Look at Katskos. Can he look for the counter engage? And they're just going to walk out straight away here. They turn and pull the trigger here in the late game. And Solary, although it looked like they'd be able to respond, they didn't account for how quickly that Baron would be taken, and it's gone in almost an instant. One of the greatest heists of the decade.
And again, just a little bit of a lapse, I suppose. When you don't have vision, you need to go and get it. You can't be taking those resets. You're playing up against a Azir and an Aphelios. Not just any Azir, by the way, either. A 3-item Azir now, who is level 18. Misfits Premier have done it. They've scaled at this point. Chayek is at the apex of mage play. Whether or not he can,
look at that damage onto Azza
into finding a win remains to be seen, but now they've got this Baron, they should be able to reclaim a lot of gold on the map and really start to force the issue on Solary.
I think one of the main problems is beyond the Xin Zhao. God, I've forgotten his name there. Beyond the Xin Zhao, there's not a lot of protection being offered for Azza, so a lot of it comes down to his own maneuvers. If he makes a mistake, no Michaelis for him, he has the cleanse obviously himself, it's all on himself. His own individual performance. He doesn't massively have a team that can prevent a lot of the bad situations he might find himself falling into here. The Misfits Premier rattling on this mid turret. They can take it slowly though, they can play the slow game. The side lane is being won for them. Like Wen versus Nah matchup.
I want to credit as well the adaptation that we see come through from Katskos. He's taken the Wit's End as a 3rd item, recognizing that if he is going to be this side lane presence, a little bit of MR is going to go a long way. Level 18 now on the Gnar, able to most likely whittle away at this turret with the 2 super or the 2 Baron Duck cannon minions, making light work of that turret really.
Yeah, he's going to be doing that completely. You can see just off screen there, he's doing absolute work there. Vander has to use ult on himself here. Here's the engage. This is what Solary needs. They've not managed to find too much here. It's a very quick short dash from Azza to get Lulu. They've got themselves a little bit of breathing room here now. Move up towards the top side.
The bot lane of Solary stepping up big time. This means that Katskos has to dip out, go back away. And the Lucian Nami once again proving that this is more than just that early game staple. They had this lead and they have ran with it at this point. They're still a full item up over Woolite, even though there's extra gold going into his pocket through the Baron, through the turrets that have been taken down. Azza has done a very good job at just continuing to pick up the gold, pick up those kills, and constantly finding people that are just a bit too far forward. Second time now that it's been Vander who gets picked off, and crucial play to not just find a kill, but essentially stops the Baron push for its entirety.
I think, yeah, just like we were trying to illustrate beforehand, Rude Dude, Azza has to be the one making these plays individually. He has to be the one to step up. He's stepped up so far. He's not been proven wrong just yet. Misfits Premier, whether they can offer an answer to Azza as he storms through the rest of this game is another question for this next dragon fight spawning in 29 seconds or so.
Setting up, it's Misfits Premier with control over the river, with control over the mid lane going the way of Solary just a little bit there with more people pushed in. Misfits Premier making sure that Solary have to face check, they have to check all of these brushes with some sort of long range skill. They're looking mainly at Lucian W to do that, or Jocko with the face.
Jocko has to use ult preemptively here, he gets a counter engage. But then Army ult also goes wide, they have full position on this team fight now. They're going to have to go straight towards that mid lane to salvage any sort of priority, but it is going to be Misfits Premier's Dragon.
Yeah. That is just Drake. As soon as you see the Xin Zhao ult used early, you can't contest that Dragon anymore, and importantly, it's not soul for the enemy team, so they don't feel too bad about it, but it is going to be that 7 Dragon, 40-minute soul coming through whenever we end up seeing it. We have got a much more pressing matter though, and that is going to be the Baron, which spawns in 2 minutes. Now, Solary tried to make a play there. They tried to make a bit of a death rush, and that sets them up to be behind on the mid lane play. Unless, of course, they just want to route through the mid lane and take a fight right there. They've got TPs.
An engage from Kiao. Culling doesn't do much damage. Vanda has to flash out here. With the flank here from Scarlet, how much can he do? He gets Vanda. He gets Wulai as well. Scarlet's come up huge with a flank. Kaskos is too late to the fray now. Zanzara and him are a 2-man mission against the 4-man onslaught. They go very low. He doesn't get Mega at all. And at the pinnacle of whereby we thought this game was going in the wrong direction, they get the Baron, does Misfits Premier. But a massive fight, a massive teleport from Scarlet means that Zanzara and all the rest of the team are taken out here. No Baron, but it's a big victory.
It is, and that sets them up now for the remainder, I feel like, of this game, right? They're not going to get the Baron, but they are going to have complete control of that top side. They're going to take this time to set up their waves, go back to base, find all of the gold that they just earned, spend it, and then be set up to take another set of fights. They only have one. They only had that arrow in the quiver once, maybe twice. That teleport fight from Scarlet was gorgeous, using that prior laid vision of the bot side to really set up for a wonderful team fight. But they don't have summoner spells on Scarlet anymore. That TP's not available. They need to try and generate that and recuperate and replay that style once again. It's not the easiest thing to ask on, to try and execute twice. It's not the easiest thing, and even after all that, they're still just dead even in gold.
Those guns from Azza are so well oiled. These combos are coming out so cleanly. You can see him using some of the animation cancels from the short E here. Jocko's coming for a flank though. Vanda does not have the summoner spells. Wulai is here. The ultimate's already been used onto Shayak. He doesn't get the Shroomer shuffle he needs. Wulai is down. So is Shayak. Counter engage from Zanzara now. But he's not going to be able to find the reset that he was looking for. And he's going to get taken out as well. Jocko looking as well now. Ignite onto him. It's a 3 for 0 for Solary. They don't have Nash. Once again, it is up.
It's just, they could look to end. It's difficult. The wave player is Nora and Lulu. They have 40 seconds on death timers. Likelihood is they get the inhib at worst and then the Baron, or they could try and play for the game here. Wave player not good. They don't need the Baron to try and close this out. The inhibitor's going to fall. Solary, they have to make that choice. Where are they going to go?
With so many questions asked about this Solary team, they look like they're going towards the end now. 0-4 was the score thus far. 18 seconds or so still. Kyo goes into stasis. Kakos has to come up massive, but he can't quite do it. He doesn't get into the Meganar. And as a 0-4 start to the split, they're the underdogs into this match, but they are going to be taking this game the whole way. And Solary come up with a victory.
And Chayek didn't die the entire game until that very end, and it just goes to show you that one death can spell disaster. Had a really good game, was looking so good, so ready to pump out team fights on the Azir, but unfortunately, just not enough, just mispositioning there in the end. Takes a Victor laser to the face and gets caught out, not having Q available, can't get that mega dash to safety, and it just sets up for Solary to find a really good engagement. Another great fight around the mid lane that honestly they had no business being able to take in the first place, but great capitalization from their carries. Once again, it was